Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to be showing you guys how you can build this cool light and dark mode effect that you might have seen in many websites getting used. So here we have this light theme wherein at the center we have the card, and then up top here we have this icon which basically signifies you can click and then change it to the dark mode. And when you click, you'd see that it changes to the dark mode. But it's not just changing it instantly. What it does, we have this circle that covers the entire site, and then when it's done covering, it basically changes the state. So we have this cool transition which makes the entire page go from light to dark mode. So we're going to be learning to build this in this video. So yeah, without delay, let's get started and let's start building it. But before that, the source code is in the description so you guys can download and play with that. So yeah, without delay, let's get started and let's build it. So here in my index.html file, I have the styling and then also the HTML, which renders into something like this. Now this is currently too bright. Here we have the soft card sort of, and then here we have the icon, which on click will basically change the theme or the mode of the website. So here we have our script tag. First thing that we're going to do is we're going to check. So we basically will be firing an event listener when the DOM content gets loaded. Now, when this gets loaded, you basically grab onto the theme button. Now, which is the theme button? The theme button is basically this SVG wherein currently shows the moon icon, which is this. We also have the sun icon here, which would want to show when it is in dark mode. So we grab onto the button. We have a state which checks if it is a dark mode. So currently it's not, so we have it as false. And then we also grab onto the root element, basically the document here, and save it in the root element. And then we have this function called as apply theme. Now, what is this apply theme? So this function would basically be applying the current theme to your site. It's going to take a variable. It's going to take a Boolean is dark. So either it's going to be true or false. Now, whatever the state of this is dark is, that is what we want to set as the state of our is dark mode value. So whatever you pass in here will become the state of this. So if you pass in true, the is dark mode would become true. After that, we grab onto the moon icon and the sun icon, and then we check if what we have is the dark state, is the dark mode basically. Then we add the class of dark to the body, hide the moon, show the sun. Else, we remove the dark class from the body if it has any. So if it doesn't have the dark class, obviously it won't remove. But then if it is already in the dark state, dark mode, it would obviously have this dark class. So we remove that. And then we show up the moon and then hide the sun. And then what we do is we have this local storage thing. Now, why do we need local storage? Now, let's just say your site has a light and dark mode. The user clicks, it changes from light to dark, and then the user clicks on the refresh button. It's going to load your page, and then it's going to come back to the initial state or the default state that you had. Now, if your site had light default, even though the user clicked on the dark mode, it would show up the light, which would look very unprofessional. So we want the information to be stored somewhere. Obviously, for simple stuff like these, you wouldn't use database. So for that, we use the local storage. So in the local storage, we create a variable with the name of theme, and then whatever the state of is dark is, we set that as the theme. So if this is true, we set it as dark, else it saves as false. Also, what you want to do is we also want to check if the theme that the user has for the system preferences, if that is in the dark mode, we want to pull up the dark mode by default, and we don't want to show the light mode. So next thing that we do is we grab onto the saved theme from the local storage. If the saved theme exists, basically if the user came to the site and then changed the state or has the dark mode activated, it would have the dark mode theme, obviously. So what we do is dark mode equals to the save mode. Basically, it checks if the save theme is dark theme. If this is true, then it's going to be true. And then else, to check the dark mode, we basically check for window.match media, and we check for prefers colors scheme. If that is dark, then you change the dark mode as dark, and then apply all the above stuff. Hopefully this makes sense. So this is the apply theme. Now, the way we toggle between the state is where the actual animation and stuff comes in. So once you have this, we want to call this function in immediately when the DOM content loads. So we have apply theme, and then we just pass in the current state of the dark mode. Let's save. And when I refresh, you'd see that now it is in the dark mode. Now, why this is in dark mode, even though we didn't toggle? The reason for that is if you look at the application tab here, if you open that up, you'd see I have this local storage, and this is the URL of the site, and then it has theme and then dark. Now, if I change this to light, and then if I refresh, you'd see now the theme changed to light mode. Now, this exact thing we want to have on click instead of changing in the browser's developer tools. So here we add an event listener to the theme button. We add an on-click listener. And what is the new theme? The new theme would be just the opposite of what the current theme is. So it's just the opposite of the current dark mode. And then since in the video, I've shown you that the circle basically appears somewhere from the middle of this button. So to get the center position of the button, what we do is we need the dimensions. We need the X and Y coordinate of the button. So we get the X and Y coordinates using get bounding client rect. And then the X position would be rect.left. Now this rect.left is basically the coordinate from here to this point. So from the left of the window to the left of the button. But then the center of the button would be also the center of the width. So we have to add the extra width of the button in here. So we just have rect.width divided by 2, which is basically the center of the width, but the actual coordinate would be when you also add the rect.left. Now the center of the button is exactly in respect to the window. Similarly, we can get the Y coordinate, and then we check for start view transition. Now this is a feature basically which got added to the newer browsers. I think it still didn't get added to a few other browsers, like I think Safari as well. So to use this, you have to be a bit careful and you have to check basically. So if this start view transition doesn't exist, you just straight up apply the theme, and which on click wouldn't work because this browser actually has the start view transition. Now, in case for the browsers that don't have, it would just immediately add the apply theme. Now, if your browser actually has, then what you want to do is you create a start view transition. Now, this, when you start the transition, it basically takes a screenshot of your browser, what's actually going on, what's the current state, and then it basically transitions from the old state to the new state. So here, what you want to do is you want to apply the new theme. So you would just add it here. And then you have this promise, which basically tells you to wait and assures you that it's going to return you at least something. So when this is ready, what you want to do is you want to fire off root element.style. You have those CSS variables that we just added here. What you do is instead of this value, you just add the coordinate of that we just created here, the X and Y coordinates. So for the X, we set that. For Y, we set that. And when I save, and let's also catch error if there's any. Let's save, let's refresh, and when I click, it basically changes the theme. But still, we don't see the circle that basically covers the entire website. So to see that, we have to add some CSS styling. So here, what we do is we already have a review in animation. So for the circle, we're using a clip path. So the circle initially has the coordinates of this. It has a 0% of scaling. And then the final state, it scales up to around 150%, which basically covers the entire screen. So we want to have this animation trigger as we change, or as we have our start view transition end, or when this is ready. So we want to sync it basically. So to do that, what we have to do is view transition.new. Here, when it is your new screen, basically, when this is the new snapshot and not the older one. By older one, I mean when you load in the page, you get these get you basically get the entire thing triggered. So if that is the case, you don't do anything, but instead, when you click on the button and then you have the animation change, that is basically the um new view transition basically. So if it's that, you trigger the animation with z index of 2, and then if it is your older one, then we don't need any animation. So let's just say you refresh the page again. You don't want the animation to show up again. So we don't show anything. Let's save. Let's refresh. It's pretty cool, right? Now there's one extra thing that you can add, and that is to isolate the z-index. Now, when you add this to your project may already have a lot of z-index stuff. So what you want to do is you want to isolate the z-index so that the z-indexes from other elements do not clash onto these. So to do that, you just grab onto view transition image pair root, which is like a container which holds both of these. And then you have isolation to isolate, which basically contains the z-index. And now this is sort of like a local z-index to this. So it can manage the z-indexes inside of the elements that this is containing. Now, even if some of your elements have a different z-index, they wouldn't clash with the z-indexes of these two. So now let me refresh, have this animation, refresh again. So we don't get to see the transition. Let's click. It's good. So yeah, this is it for this video. Hope this was fun. Hope you learned something new. The source code is going to be down in the description, so you guys can download, play with that, use it anyhow you like. Meet you guys in the next video. Till then, take care. Bye bye and peace.